very busy chart. And it's about the two worlds that we live in. And unfortunately, since this world up here, which is the world of spirit, and I am spirit, since it is infinite, it's very hard to fit it all in one half of a little chart like this. The word down here, the other world that we live in, is the world of ego that we created, because each one of us, being an infinite spiritual being, has created an ego. And the ego is the part of us that we're most familiar with, that we live in and with every single day of the year. It's also very familiar with this world of physical reality, at least we call it reality. To me it seems more unreal every day. But because to me this has become the reality. So the spirit world, of course, has all of these things that I've written. I don't know if you can read them all. Are all attributes or qualities of it. It's a realm of infinite energy. It's also been called the infinite invisible. We can't see it, therefore we don't see that we're very much in touch with it. And in between the two worlds is our individual self, or our individual spirit, created by God within the overall spirit, which is infinite. And we do have some bridges between the two worlds, which I've shown here in green. I don't know if you can read them. One of them is miracles, meditation, faith, and intuition, and I'm sure there are many others, such as religious paths, such as this one, or any other, Buddhism, Sufism, or any other religious path. And these are transitions from this world to this world, because I think we'd probably all agree we would rather live here than here, although we seem to live in both places at once most of the time. The point I wanted to make about the ego is that it's a very addictive personality, and that it grabs hold of us and it won't let go. And if you've ever tried to surrender your ego, or ask your ego to surrender, you know that a lot of things hang on and hang on and hang on, are very difficult to get rid of. And no matter how many affirmations you say, it seems like the ego does the opposite, because it's an opposite kind of function. And it's opposite to God, and therefore it feels very, very separate. And the separation brings fear. I believe that all fear comes from separation from God. Now, this separation is just imagined, because none of us can ever be separate from God. We've been created in this realm of intelligence and beauty and peace and truth and acceptance, and that's where we are. And we are, even though we seem to live in this world of ego, which is a world of appearances, we really are still in this world just as we were created by God. So inside each one of us, which is where this realm really is, and it's inside and it's all around and it's everywhere, is this perfect being. I think I forgot to put perfection in here, but it certainly belongs there. Perfect being that we are, that we don't even know. Most of us, we feel alienated from our true self, who we really are. And we are constantly in touch with our ego, who worries about how to pay the bills and what to buy for dinner, and what clothes to wear and where to go and doing our jobs, etc., etc., etc. So the ego gives rise to a lot of qualities that appear to be negative, and that's because that's the nature of the ego. The ego was originally set up by each one of us. I can't remember setting up my ego ever on a conscious basis, but I know that we did, because otherwise it wouldn't be there. And it was set up to take care of our own individuality within this infinite realm of spirit. And unfortunately, we gave our ego more and more power, because we seemed to like the things that it was doing. And in the beginning, it was very benign, and it cooperated with other egos. But eventually, the selfish part of the ego came out. I want more than you have, and why do you have more than I have? And having itself, the function of having, is part of ego, because it's part of this world. So the ego is very connected with our bodies, physical bodies, and the physical objects around us. And it keeps creating more and more and more. Most of our world today is an ego world. All of us are trying as best we can to use these bridges to come back into the spirit world, or at least to bring the spirit world into the ego world so that we live in a much more benign and happy and conscious environment. But we have difficulty, as I said, doing this because we have to find the right way, and each one of us has to do it on an individual basis for ourselves. Nobody can do it for us. The path that I use, that I found most useful for myself, is, which I haven't written on the chart because I ran out of room, is the 12 steps of 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, which now have spread to many, many different areas of life. And I believe that those 12 steps apply to the ego just as much because, as I mentioned before, we are addicted to our egos. Our egos just take over, and we think that's who we are, and we forget about our true selves. Originally, when we were created by God, we knew, and I think knowing is another function that belongs here. We don't have to think in this realm. We don't have to reason. We don't need logic. We just know, and we know everything. We know all the knowledge that is to be, all the knowledge that has been, and all the knowledge that is now. And we can communicate with each other without words in this realm. We communicate either in images or in concepts or in just transmitting energy. Everything here, of course, is energy. And a more correct way of drawing this chart would be for it to encompass the whole, because it spreads out to infinity in every direction. And so the ego would be underneath it, underlying the spirit within us. Now, if we do choose one of these paths to go from here to here, if our spiritual self, our true self, who really are, makes the decision to listen either to this voice, which is inside every one of us, the voice of Spirit and God, or to continue to listen to our ego, who says, you know, I'm better than you, and I'm going to do it better than you, or else I'm worse than you. Ego in reverse does the same thing, just totally deprecates itself. And my ego, when I was in the beginning of this process of transformation, was jumping back and forth from one to the other. I was either the best of everyone or I was the worst. And I, you know, trying to compensate for being the worst, I tried to make believe I was the best. The ego also invents a lot of things. It invents itself, of course. And so it's very difficult for the ego to know or even tell the truth. The truth is completely in this realm. In this realm, in the spirit realm, we know the truth. And we know all of the truth, but our ego doesn't want to believe it because it wants to run its own show and it wants to say that it performs all of these things that spirit performs. And I think that's one of the reasons we feel so empty inside. It's because our ego is all sham, facade, illusion, doesn't really exist. So we're imagining this whole world, including the world of, you know, physical world. We call the physical world the real world. And I think that's a total misnomer. I think the real world is the energy world of God. And the ego world is not real. So, but how come that we look so real to each other, you know? And this chair looks real, and this floor, and this room, and this building. Everything looks so real because we're so used to thinking through our ego that reality is really what our ego has become, what our ego is defining it to be, rather than what it truly is. So it's really up to us to either continue